Where does your consciousness go when you sleep? This is a question that has occupied the mind of mystics, philosophers, and seekers for ages. The mystery of sleep is no less profound than the mystery of death. For in both states, the conscious awareness of the body, the senses, and the external world is withdrawn. Yet unlike death, in sleep we return, refreshed and renewed, as though we had dipped into an invisible reservoir of peace. Paramahansa Yogananda often pointed out that sleep is nature's way of reminding us of our higher self, a daily rehearsal of the great departure from the body, and an unconscious return to the source of all life. To understand what happens to our consciousness during sleep is to touch the very secret of human existence. For sleep reveals the hidden destiny of the soul and the possibility of merging with God. In this video, we will discover the forbidden knowledge about where the consciousness go when we sleep. I hope you enjoy this video. Let's dive deep together. When you fall asleep at night, what happens to that vivid sense of I am? Where do your thoughts, your worries, your plans vanish? You may lie down with a troubled mind, yet upon awakening, sometimes the burden seems mysteriously lighter. Consciousness, during sleep, retreats from the surface level of awareness, the constant flow of thoughts, emotions, sensory impressions, and sinks deeper into subtler dimensions of being. Yogananda explained that the soul never sleeps. It is ever awake in God. What sleeps is the body and the mind. When the conscious mind is silenced, the subconscious takes over, weaving dreams from past impressions, memories, and desires. Behind that, in the deeper stages of sleep, the soul rests closer to its true home in spirit, though most people do not perceive this union consciously. Dreams occupy a peculiar space in this mystery. Why do we dream? Dreams are the language of the subconscious, a theater where the unfulfilled desires, fears, and impressions of the day and of past lives are played out. The soul itself does not dream, but the subconscious mind creates them when the conscious mind is no longer in command. In meditation, Yogananda taught one can learn to bypass the subconscious dream state and enter the superconscious directly. Superconscious sleep is not unconsciousness but perfect awareness without restlessness, a state yogis call samadhi. For the ordinary person, however, sleep is the nearest experience to samadhi, a state of temporary release from the burden of ego. Consider how the body and brain function during sleep. Science tells us about stages of REM and non-REM, about electrical patterns in the brain, about hormones that regulate rest. But the yogi goes deeper. Beyond the mechanics lies the truth that consciousness withdraws through the doorways of the senses, retreating to subtler dimensions. In wakefulness, the life force, prana, is engaged in operating the senses, the muscles, and the ceaseless activity of thought. In sleep, prana turns inward, healing and repairing the body. That is why you awaken refreshed. The vital currents have returned to the inner reservoir of life. Yogananda often said that during deep sleep, the soul is temporarily reabsorbed into spirit, but without awareness. You touch God every night, but you do not know it, because the conscious mind is absent. This is why the yogis valued meditation so highly. Meditation is conscious sleep, where you withdraw the currents from the senses not into darkness but into light. In meditation, you can experience what happens naturally in sleep, but with awareness, conscious union with the infinite. The difference is vast. In sleep, ignorance veils the experience. In meditation, wisdom illumines it. Yogananda explained that when you go into deep meditation and dissolve the restlessness of the mind, you enter the same state you pass through unconsciously every night. The only distinction is that now you bring your awareness with you, and this transforms the unconscious, merging into a divine experience of bliss. But where exactly does consciousness go in the interval of deep sleep? One might say it sinks back into its source, just as a wave subsides into the ocean. The individualized sense of self temporarily dissolves into a vast peace. That is why you wake up refreshed, because for a time you were free from the burden of the ego, the endless chatter of the mind. The soul touches its own essence. Yogananda explained that during sleep the consciousness withdraws from the body into the astral spine, and from there into the astral body. If one is spiritually advanced, one may roam the astral realms in awareness, meeting loved ones or even great saints. Most people, however, simply drift into unconsciousness, returning without memory of the journey. The astral body never sleeps. It continues to function, and only the physical senses are silenced. Death itself is but a longer sleep. The body is discarded entirely, and the soul continues its journey in the astral worlds. But every night, in miniature, you undergo a rehearsal of death. Consciousness leaves the body, travels inward, rests in the astral dimension, and returns at dawn to resume the drama of Earth. The wise seek to become aware of this transition, to carry consciousness across the border of sleep. This is why Yogananda urged his students to fall asleep in meditation, to train the mind to remain uplifted even in dreams. If you enter sleep with thoughts of God, with your consciousness lifted to the spiritual eye, your soul will ascend to higher realms during the night. On the other hand, if you enter sleep with worry, fear, or unwholesome thoughts, your subconscious will weave restless dreams that bind you to lower vibrations. The experience of sleep reveals that consciousness is not confined to the brain. If it were merely a product of neurons, then how could it vanish each night and return without interruption of identity? Consciousness belongs to the soul, not the body. The body is but a garment, and sleep is the daily reminder that you are not the garment but the life within it. Yogananda often encouraged his disciples to observe carefully the moments just before falling asleep and just upon awakening. For in those brief instants one can glimpse the transition of awareness. These are doorways where the soul peeks through the veil. Imagine if you could remain aware in that passage into sleep, watching the senses shut down one by one, seeing the world dissolve into inner light. The yogis mastered this art, training themselves to transfer consciousness at will, whether into sleep, into the astral worlds, or into the infinite spirit. For them, there was no break in awareness, no gap of unconsciousness. This is what liberation means, to remain ever awake in God, whether in the body or out of it. When a man asks, "Where does my consciousness go when I sleep?" the deeper truth is that he is really asking, "What am I? Am I this fleeting body, these restless thoughts, this personality that disappears in sleep? Or am I something greater?" The answer, Yogananda would say, is that you are the soul, immortal, changeless, ever awake in spirit. Sleep is a reminder of that truth. For each night you cast aside your little identity and merge, however dimly, into your greater self. You do not fear this merging, because you know you will return. Likewise, the yogi learns not to fear death, for it is but another sleep, from which the soul awakens in another realm of existence. Thus, sleep is not merely biological. It is deeply spiritual. It is the Divine Mother's way of healing the body, resting the mind, and giving the soul a taste of its true home. But she hides the awareness of this union so that man may continue his earthly duties. If you were conscious every night of your oneness with the infinite, you might lose all interest in the play of life. And yet, through meditation, God allows you to awaken gradually to this bliss until you are strong enough to live in both worlds, functioning in the world of duties while inwardly dwelling in spirit. Yogananda reminded us that the goal of life is to make our nights like meditation and our meditation like conscious sleep. In that balance, you carry peace through every activity. Where does your consciousness go when you sleep? It goes back to the source, but unconscious of that return. Learn to go there consciously, and you will discover that sleep and wakefulness, life and death, are but passing shadows on the screen of your eternal existence.